Keanu Reeves stood frozen watching the young pregnant woman struggling to stock shelves at the grocery store. Her exhaustion was palpable, yet her determination shone through what he did next would forever change her life. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. It was an unassuming Wednesday evening. In a quiet Los Angeles neighborhood, Keanu had stopped by a small local grocery store to grab a few essentials. Hoping to avoid attention, he was dressed simply, wearing a baseball cap pulled low, and a jacket that had seen better days, blending effortlessly with the everyday crowd as he strolled through the aisles. His attention was drawn to a woman working tirelessly, her pregnant belly unmistakable under the oversized uniform shirt. She couldn't have been more than 25, her youthful face betraying the weight of responsibilities far beyond her years. Her name tag read Emily, and she greeted every customer with a weary but genuine smile. Keanu watched as she lifted a heavy box of canned goods, her movements deliberate but strained. A coworker passed by offering no assistance, and Emily didn't ask for any. It was clear she was used to doing things alone. Something about her resilience struck a chord in him. The actor approached her quietly, noticing the sweat on her brow and the slight tremble in her hands as she placed the cans on the shelf. Hey, do you need some help with that? He asked, his voice gentle but concerned. Emily turned startled, her cheeks flushing as she recognized him. Oh, no, I'm fine, she stammered, trying to mask her struggle. Keanu didn't press but stayed nearby, pretending to browse the shelves. Over the next hour he observed her interacting with customers, some of whom were curt or impatient. Despite everything, she remained kind, her patience unwavering. When she stepped away briefly, Keanu approached the store manager. How long has she been working here? he asked. The manager sighed. Emily, she's been here for a year, works double shifts most days. She's saving up for the baby. She's a hard worker, doesn't complain even when she should. Keanu felt a knot form in his chest. As someone who had faced his share of loss and hardship, he understood what it meant to push forward no matter how heavy the burden. Without drawing attention, Keanu made his way to the checkout counter, purchasing a gift card worth a significant amount and leaving a note attached. He handed it to the manager with a quiet request, please make sure she gets this, but don't tell her it's from me. But that wasn't the end of it. Keanu couldn't shake the image of Emily from his mind as he left the store. A plan began to form, one that would not only ease her current struggles but perhaps offer her and her unborn child a brighter future. Keane couldn't sleep that night. Emily's face, her quiet resolve, and the way she bore the weight of her struggles lingered in his mind. He thought about the stories he'd heard over the years of people doing their best against impossible odds. It wasn't just her determination that moved him, it was the way she carried herself, as though asking for help was never an option. The next morning, Keanu decided to return to the store. He wasn't sure why. Maybe he just wanted to make sure she was okay. To his surprise, Emily was already there, restocking the shelves. With the same quiet persistence, she looked exhausted, as though she hadn't slept, but her smile hadn't faded. Keanu approached her again, this time with a bag of freshly brewed coffee and a warm pea pastry from a nearby cafe. Good morning, he said, holding them out. Emily blinked, her expression a mix of gratitude and confusion. You didn't have to do that, she murmured, but her hands reached out instinctively to take the offering. Sometimes people need a little kindness, Keanu said simply, his voice steady. They talked briefly about the weather, the store, and her favorite kinds of coffee. Emily was guarded at first, but as their conversation continued, she opened up. She shared that she'd moved to Los Angeles a year ago after her husband had left her. When she discovered she was pregnant, alone and without family nearby, she'd taken on double shifts at the store to prepare for the baby. As she spoke, Keanu listened intently, his heart breaking. With every word he recognized a familiar pain in her voice, the loneliness, the fear, the overwhelming sense of responsibility. I'm sorry you're going through this, he said softly, his sincerity cutting through the noise of the store. But you're stronger than you think. Emily Smiled, her eyes glistening. Thank you, she whispered. I don't hear that often. Over the next few weeks Keanu became a regular at the grocery store. He never made a big deal of his visits, blending in like any other customer, but he always found small ways to help. Sometimes it was paying for a customer's groceries when they came up short, other times it was quietly leaving a larger tip than necessary at the checkout. And then one evening, as Emily was walking home after her shift, she spotted Keanu waiting near the bus stop. He wasn't alone. Beside him was a car, a modest, reliable sedan that looked brand new. Keanu, she called out, her voice uncertain. He turned, smiling warmly. Emily, he said, stepping forward, I know you're too proud to ask for help, but I also know how hard you're working. This is for you and your baby, no strings attached. Tears filled Emily's eyes as she stared at the car, speechless. She tried to protest, but Keanu gently placed the keys in her hand. Just promise me one thing, he said, his voice thick with emotion. When you're able, pass the kindness forward. Emily nodded, unable to find the words to express her gratitude. As she stepped into the car for the first time, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, hope. But what Emily didn't know was that Keanu wasn't done yet. Somewhere deep in his heart he felt that their paths had crossed for a reason, and he wasn't about to let her face the future alone. Over the following days, Emily's life seemed to shift, though she couldn't fully understand why. The car had lifted an immense weight off her shoulders, but it wasn't just about the vehicle, it was the way Keanu had looked at her with genuine care, as though she mattered in a world that so often seemed indifferent. Still, Emily tried to keep her routine unchanged. She worked the same shifts, greeted the same customers, and managed her pregnancy alone as she always had. But one night, as she pulled into the driveway of her modest apartment complex, she noticed a small package sitting at her doorstep. Inside was a handwritten note. You're not invisible, you're not alone. Beneath it was an envelope containing enough cash to cover her rent for months. Emily's hands trembled as she read the words. She didn't need to guess who had sent it. Her first instinct was to confront Keanu, but she realized she had no idea where he lived or how to contact him. He appeared at the store sporadically, never drawing attention to himself, always leaving before she could muster the courage to thank him properly. One evening, as the store's closing hour neared, Emily spotted Keanu in the produce aisle. She took a deep breath and approached him, determined to express her gratitude. You've done so much for me, she began, her voice thick with emotion. I don't know why you care so much, but Keanu interrupted her gently. You don't owe me an explanation, Emily. Sometimes people cross paths because they're meant to. You remind me of someone I once knew, someone who taught me what it means to persevere. Emily tilted her head, sensing the pain behind his words. Who was she? Keanu hesitated, his eyes growing distant. My sister, he admitted quietly. She was kind like you. She never gave up even when the odds were stacked against her. She passed away a long time ago, but I think she'd want me to help people the way she used to. Emily's heart ached at his confession. She placed a hand on his arm, unsure of what to say. For a moment they stood in silence, two people connected by shared struggles and unspoken pain. In the weeks that followed, Keanu's involvement in Emily's life became more deliberate. He didn't want to overstep, but he found small ways to be there, dropping off groceries, surprising her with baby essentials, and once even helping her paint the nursery she'd been too exhausted to finish. Emily began to feel something she hadn't felt in years, a sense of belonging, and yet she couldn't ignore the growing feeling she was developing for Keanu. It scared her. He was kind and selfless, but he was also a world-famous actor. What could he possibly see in someone like her? One night, as they sat on the floor of her apartment assembling a crib, Emily broke the silence. Why do you keep showing up for me? She asked, her voice trembling. Keanu sat down, the screwdriver, his gaze steady. Because you deserve to be shown that you're worth it, he said simply. Tears welled in her eyes as she looked at him, the walls she'd built around her heart slowly crumbling. You don't even know me. I know enough, Keanu replied, his voice soft. I Know you're strong even when you don't feel like it. I know you cared deeply about your child, and I know you've been through more than most people could bear. That's enough for me. For the first time in years, Emily felt safe. She leaned into Keanu's embrace, allowing herself to let go of the fear and doubt that had consumed her for so long. But as the days turned into weeks, questions began to arise about Keanu's intentions, about whether he could truly be a part of her life and her child. Could their connection withstand the scrutiny of the world, or would it crumble under the weight of their differences? Days turned into weeks, and a quiet rhythm developed between Emily and Keanu. He continued to show up in her life, but always in ways that felt natural, never imposing. Emily found herself smiling more, laughing, even something she hadn't done in a long time. For the first time since her world had crumbled, she felt like maybe, just maybe, things could get better. One rainy evening, Keanu invited her out for dinner at a cozy little diner on the outskirts of town. The place wasn't fancy, but it was warm and inviting, with checkered tablecloths and the comforting smell of fresh coffee. Emily hesitated at first, unsure if it was a date or just another one of his kind gestures, but something about the way he looked at her when he asked made her heart race. They sat in a corner booth sharing stories and Keanu spoke about his childhood, his struggles with loss, and how he found solace in simple acts of kindness. Emily opened up about her dreams, how she'd once wanted to become a nurse, how she'd imagined raising her child in a home filled with love and security. You still can, Keanu said softly, his eyes meeting hers. It's not too late to chase what you want. Emily looked down at her hands, her fingers nervously tracing the edge of her coffee cup. It feels like it is sometimes like I've already failed you, haven't? Keanu assured her. The fact that you keep going even when it's hard proves that you're anything but a failure. As the conversation deepened, Emily felt a warmth blooming in her chest, a feeling she hadn't allowed herself to experience in years. Keanu's words weren't just kind, they were genuine, filled with an understanding that felt almost too perfect to be real. But as the evening drew to a close and Keanu walked her to her car, Emily's mind raced with doubts. What was she doing? How could she let herself feel something for him, knowing the world he came from was so far removed from hers? I had a great time tonight, she said, her voice hesitant. Keanu smiled. So did I. You deserve nights like this, Emily. Don't forget that. As he turned to leave, she called out to him. Keanu. He stopped, looking back with that same calm, reassuring expression. Why me? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Out of all the people you could help, why did you choose me? Keanu paused, considering his words carefully. Because I saw myself in you, he finally said, and I know what it's like to feel like the world's forgotten you. Emily's throat tightened as tears threatened to spill. She wanted to believe him, to trust that someone like him could see her as more than just another broken soul. As Keanu drove away that night, he couldn't shake the image of Emily's face, the mixture of hope and fear that had flickered in her eyes. For all his fame and success, he felt like she was the one teaching him something profound. But life has a way of testing even the most heartfelt connections. Just when it seemed like Emily's life was starting to mend, an unexpected event would force them both to confront the deepest truths about themselves and about each other. A few months passed, and Emily's due date crept closer with every passing day. Her bond with Keanu grew deeper. He became her closest confidant, someone who listened without judgment and offered support without expectation. It felt surreal to Emily, a world-famous actor showing up in her life not for the cameras but for her. One evening, as they sat on her small living room floor folding tiny baby clothes, Keanu brought up an idea that had been weighing on his mind. Emily, he started, his voice cautious but warm. I've been thinking about something. She looked up, her hands pausing mid. What is it? I want to do more for you, not just now but for the future. I know you're proud and you don't like relying on anyone, but I believe in you. I see so much strength in you, and I think you deserve a chance to create the life you've always dreamed of. Emily frowned, unsure where he was going. What are you saying, Keanu? He took a deep breath, his gaze steady. I want to help You go back to school if that's what you want to become a nurse like you talked about. I'll cover the costs. The child care whatever you need. This isn't charity, it's an investment in someone I believe in. Her heart swelled with emotion but doubt quickly followed. Keanu, I can't let you do that. You've already done so much for me. I don't even know how I'd repay you. You don't need to repay me, he said, his voice firm but gentle. Just promise me you'll believe in yourself as much as I believe in you. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she nodded. For the first time in years the idea of a future didn't seem so far away. Weeks later Emily went into labor. The pain was overwhelming, but as she clutched Keanu's hand in the hospital room she felt a strength she hadn't known she had. He stayed by her side the entire time, whispering words of encouragement and wiping away her tears. When the baby was finally born, a beautiful healthy little girl, Emily held her close, overwhelmed by a love so fierce it took her breath away. She looked up at Keanu, who was watching with a tenderness that made her heart ache. Would you like to hold her? She asked, her voice soft. Keanu hesitated, but when Emily gently placed the baby in his arms, his expression melted. She's perfect, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Emily watched him, her heart full. Keanu, she said after a moment, I've been thinking about what you said about believing in myself, and I realized something. He looked up, curious. What's that? I can't do this alone, she admitted, her voice trembling. I don't want to. You've been there for me in ways I didn't think anyone could be, and I think I've fallen for you. Keanu's eyes softened and he stepped closer, still cradling the baby. Emily, you don't have to be afraid of needing someone. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. I care about you, both of you, more than I can put into words. The room was silent except for the quiet coo of the baby. Emily reached out, her hand resting over his. I don't know what the future looks like, but I want you to be a part of it. Keanu smiled, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. I already am. As they stood there, a new family forming in the hospital room, Emily felt a peace she hadn't known in years. Keanu had shown her that love could heal, that kindness could change lives, and that even in the darkest moments hope could find its way back. The future wasn't certain, but it was full of possibility, and this time she wasn't walking into it alone.